Have you ever been in a situation where you felt like you couldn't say no, even though every fiber of your being was screaming at you to walk away? That's exactly where I found myself last weekend, and let me tell you, it's a story I never thought I'd be sharing. It all started with a simple visit to my uncle's house. You know, the kind of family gathering where everything seems normal at first until it's not. My uncle has always been a broken bar, let's just say, eccentric. He's the kind of person who loves pushing boundaries, especially when it comes to trying new things. But this time, he took it to a whole new level, and somehow, I ended up right in the middle of Ida with his dog, on camera. It was supposed to be a chill afternoon. I hadn't seen my uncle in months, and he'd been begging me to come over and hang out. When I got there, everything seemed fine. His dog, Max, a big, goofy golden retriever, was as friendly as ever, wagging his tail and begging for treats. My uncle, though, had this glint in his eye that I should have recognized as trouble. He's always been into weird experiments, like the time he tried to teach Max how to talk using buttons. But this was something else entirely. He had his camera set up in the living room, and before I knew it, he was suggesting we try something fun and totally harmless. His exact words were, "Trust me, it'll be hilarious." Spoiler alert, it was not hilarious. At first, I thought he was joking. He wanted me to do the broken bar thing with Max, something he claimed would go viral if we filmed it. I won't go into too much detail yet, but let's just say it involved Max, a very specific trick, and me being way out of my comfort zone. I tried to laugh it off, but my uncle wasn't taking no for an answer. He kept insisting, saying things like, "Come on, it's just for fun. And you'll regret it if you don't." And before I knew it, I was sitting there, camera rolling, with Max looking at me like I was the crazy one. What happened next was a broken bar. Well, let's just say it didn't go as planned. I'm not even sure how to describe it without giving too much away, but let me tell you, things escalated quickly. Max, being the lovable but unpredictable dog he is, had his own ideas about how this experiment should go. And my uncle? He was just standing there, filming everything, egging us on like it was the best thing he'd ever seen. I kept thinking, how did I even get here? But by then, it was too late to back out. By the end of it, I was left wondering if I'd just been part of the weirdest family moment of all time yet, or if I'd accidentally signed up for something I couldn't undo. And the worst part? My uncle still has the footage. I don't know what he's planning to do with it, but I have a feeling this isn't the last I'll hear about it. So, what exactly happened? Well, you'll have to stick around for the next part of the story, because trust me, it only gets crazier from here. To understand how I ended up in this bizarre situation, I need to take you back a bit. My uncle has always been the funny guy in the family, the one who's always coming up with wild ideas. He's the kind of person who doesn't just think outside the box, so he throws the box away and sets it on fire. And Max, his dog, is his partner in crime. Max isn't just a pet, he's practically my uncle's sidekick. They've done everything from hiking trips to TikTok challenges together. But this time, my uncle's idea was a broken bar different. When I first arrived at his house, he was unusually excited. He kept talking about how he'd been brainstorming something big and how he needed my help to pull it off. At first, I thought it was just another one of his pranks or maybe a new trick he was teaching Max. But as the afternoon went on, I started to notice little things that made me uneasy. The camera was already set up on a tripod, and he had this notebook filled with scribbled ideas and diagrams. When I asked him what it was all about, he just grinned and said, "You'll see." The moment he brought up the idea of me being part of it, I should have walked out. But you know how family can be, there's this unspoken pressure to go along with things, even when your gut is telling you not to. He kept saying things like, "It's just for fun, and you'll thank me later." But the way he was looking at me made me feel like I was part of some grand scheme I didn't fully understand. And then there was Max, sitting there with his big, innocent eyes, completely unaware of the chaos that was about to unfold. By the time I realized how deep I was in, it was too late. The camera was rolling, and my uncle was giving me instructions like some kind of mad scientist. I kept thinking, what am I even doing here? But the more I tried to back out, the more he pushed. And now, here I am, stuck in the middle of whatever this is, with no idea how it's going to end. As the camera kept rolling, I could feel the tension building. My uncle was pacing around, giving me these cryptic directions, while Max just sat there, tilting his head like he was trying to figure out what was going on. I kept asking my uncle what the point of all this was, but he just kept saying, "Trust the process." Trust the process? What process? All I knew was that I was supposed to do something with Max, something that involved a lot of treats, a weird contraption my uncle had rigged up, and a whole lot of awkwardness on my part. The longer it went on, the more I started to notice little details that made me even more uneasy. Like the way my uncle kept glancing at the camera, making sure it was capturing every angle. Or the way he'd suddenly stop and jot something down in his notebook, like he was documenting some kind of experiment. And then there was Max. At first, he seemed like his usual happy self, but as the trick went on, he started to get restless. He kept looking at me like he was waiting for me to do something, but I had no idea what. I tried to keep my cool, but inside, I was panicking. What if this whole thing backfired? What if Max got scared or something went wrong? My uncle kept assuring me that everything was under control, but the way he was acting made me think otherwise. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get any weirder, he dropped a bombshell. "Oh, by the way," he said casually, "I might have invited a few friends to watch the video later." Wait, what? Friends? As in, other people were going to see this? I felt my stomach drop. This wasn't just some silly family moment anymore. This was turning into something much bigger, and I had no idea how to stop it. The moment my uncle mentioned his friends, I felt a wave of dread wash over me. "What do you mean, friends?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He just shrugged and said, "You know, a few people who might find These a Broken Bar interesting." Interesting? What did that even mean? I wanted to press him for more details, but he was already back to fiddling with the camera, adjusting the angle and muttering to himself about lighting and framing. Meanwhile, Max was starting to get impatient. He kept nudging my hand with his nose, looking for treats, but I was too distracted to give him any. My mind was racing. Who were these friends? Were they going to see the video online? Was my uncle planning to post this somewhere? The thought of this whole thing going public made me feel sick to my stomach. I tried to tell myself that it was just my uncle being his usual over-the-top self, but deep down, I knew this was different. As the experiment continued, things started to spiral out of control. Max, who had been so patient at first, suddenly decided he'd had enough. He started barking, pulling at the contraption my uncle had set up, and generally causing chaos. My uncle, instead of calming him down, seemed thrilled. "This is perfect!" he exclaimed, grabbing his notebook and scribbling furiously. "The unpredictability is exactly what we need." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Here I was, caught in the middle of this madness, with no idea how it was going to end. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, my uncle dropped another bombshell. "Oh, and by the way," he said, not even looking up from his notebook, "I might have entered this into a contest." A contest? My heart sank. This wasn't just some random idea anymore. This was something he'd been planning for a while. And now, I was right in the middle of it, with no way out. A contest? My mind was spinning. What kind of contest? And more importantly, what had I just signed up for? I tried to get more details out of my uncle, but he was being unusually secretive. All he would say was that it was a big opportunity and that I should be excited. Excited? I was anything but. As the chaos with Max continued, I started to piece things together. My uncle had been talking about this contest for weeks, but I'd never paid much attention. It was some kind of online challenge, something about showcasing unique pet tricks or stunts. The prize? a hefty cash reward and a chance to go viral. Suddenly, it all made sense. My uncle wasn't just doing this for Funa, he was doing it for the fame, the money, and the bragging rights. And I was his unwilling accomplice. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. How could he drag me into this without even asking? And what about Max? Was he even okay with all of this? I looked over at Max, who was now lying on the floor, panting and looking exhausted. He seemed fine, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this whole thing was wrong. Just as I was about to confront my uncle, he dropped another bombshell. "Oh, and one more thing," he said, grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. "The contest deadline is tonight. So, we need to get this video edited and submitted ASAP." Tonight? My heart raced. There was no way we could pull this off in time. But my uncle seemed convinced we could. He was already pulling up editing software on his laptop, muttering about cuts and transitions. I felt like I was trapped in some kind of nightmare, with no way out. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mom. "Hey, your uncle told me about the contest. Good luck." Wait, what? My mom knew about this too? I felt a surge of panic. How many people were in on this? And more importantly, how was I going to get out of it? The climax hit like a thunderclap. Just as my uncle was about to hit submit on the contest entry, Max did something completely unexpected. He jumped up, knocked the laptop off the table, and sent it crashing to the floor. The screen went black, and for a moment, everything was silent. My uncle stared at the broken laptop in shock, then turned to Max, who was wagging his tail like nothing had happened. "Max!" he shouted, but there was no anger in his voice and just disbelief. I couldn't help it, I burst out laughing. The look on my uncle's face was priceless. But the chaos wasn't over yet. As my uncle tried to salvage the laptop, I noticed something on the floor. It was his notebook, open to a page filled with scribbled notes and diagrams. And there, in bold letters, was the title of his big idea, "The Ultimate Doggone Human Challenge." Underneath it was a list of steps, including one that made my blood run cold: involve family member for maximum effect. I felt a surge of anger. This wasn't just some harmless experiment, it was a calculated plan, and I was nothing more than a pawn in my uncle's game. I grabbed the notebook and held it up. "What is this?" I demanded. My uncle froze, then tried to laugh it off. "Oh, that? Just some brainstorming," he said, but I wasn't buying it. "You used me," I said, my voice shaking. "You didn't even ask if I was okay with this. And what about Max? Did you even think about how this would affect him?" For the first time, my uncle looked genuinely guilty. "Yeah, broken bar, I didn't think," he stammered. I just got carried away. It was a moment of truth. The tension in the room was palpable, and I knew things would never be the same between us. But before I could say anything else, Max let out a loud bark, breaking the silence. We both turned to look at him, and for the first time that day, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could fix this. In the end, the broken laptop turned out to be a blessing in disguise. Without the video, there was no contest entry, and without the contest, there was no pressure. My uncle and I sat down and had a long, honest talk about what had happened. He apologized for dragging me into his scheme and admitted that he'd gotten carried away with the idea of fame and money. As for Max, he was just happy to be back to his normal routine of naps and treats. I made sure to give him extra attention, and he seemed to forgive us for the chaos we'd put him through. The whole experience taught me a valuable lesson about boundaries and the importance of speaking up when something doesn't feel right. It also brought my uncle and me closer in a weird way. We agreed to stick to simpler, less chaotic projects in the future, like teaching Max to fetch the newspaper or maybe just going for a walk. Looking back, I can laugh about it now, but at the time, it was one of the most stressful days of my life. And as for the video? Well, let's just say it's safely deleted, and my uncle has promised to never bring it up again. So, what's the takeaway from all of this? Sometimes, Family can push you to your limits, but at the end of the day, they're the ones who'll be there to pick up the pieces even if they're the ones who caused the mess in the first place. And as for Max? He's still the best dog in the world, even if he did almost send us to viral infamy. Thanks for sticking with me through this wild story. If you've ever been in a similar situation, let me know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories from my crazy life. Until next time.